Evening, everybody. Welcome back to another show. Happy Thursday. For some of you, it may be closer to the end of Thursday than normal, but so I wanted to do a show now that we're, several days away from the results of the election, and news is coming in involving Trump's assigned people and takes about what the Dems did wrong and what the conservatives got right, and et cetera, et cetera. And there is a lot of BS flying around out there, a ton of it. So I'm going to try to, with this video, condescendingly provide some, I think, some historical perspective on where this is going, where we've been, and why a lot of people in the media seem to have fallen into like a collective amnesia hole when it comes to not just this guy, Trump, as president, but why people would vote for him, and why his message resonated with enough people to kind of get him in. So yeah, we're going to do that, and we're going to start with Pine Creek. So Pine Creek did this video. CNN journalists and conservative Republicans summarize why Trump won. #building bridges. The CNN journalist is Fareed Zakaria, who has a remarkably dim-witted take on the three things the Democrats got wrong. Don't get me wrong, Democrats got things wrong, but the three things that Fareed Zakaria mentions are asinine. And then spliced in that is going to be Doug's reasons for why he thinks that they didn't do that. He's the conservative Republican in the title. So we're going to get started with that. I am going to bring up the chat here and say hello to a few people that are here. Bridge the Divide is here. Good to see you, JL. Wraith Knight is here. Good to see you. At Vesta Freya is also here. The world is laughing at the USA and at the same time very sad. It is very sad. It's just kind of mind-bogglingly frustrating at this point. Coco's is here. Good to see you. I wonder how things are going in Poland. But Amy Every is here. Good to see you, Amy. Nice hat, homeboy. Thank you. Good to see you, DT. Let's see. Pat is here. Did someone say history? Yeah, I mean, it's more recent political history, but we're going to get into it. James F. is here. RFK will officially be the secretary of HHS. Yeah, until Trump fires him. I mean, I give it, what, 12, 18 months before half his staff are acting, Let's see. Bellywood is here. Good to see you. Clout is here. Hello, hello. And Vic Lit is here. Good to see you all. I do apologize for covering more of the political stuff, but the political stuff is kind of on my mind, and I want to. So I know everybody's getting kind of fatigued by it, but I think it's kind of necessary. Not really necessary. I'd be tooting my own horn. My channel's too small for that, but to put something out that I think maybe puts a little bit of a different varnish on some of the stories that are coming up. So I'm going to be trying to adjust a few things here with some of the takes I've been hearing, because a lot of the conventional wisdom that's been going around about this has been remarkably, like I said, kind of dim-witted. So the first thing I need to point out, the first thing that needs to go in this is for those of you who don't know this, if you're not political dorks like me, understanding the concept of the Overton window. If you know what that is, the Overton window is essentially kind of the prescribed acceptable limits of political ideology allowed in kind of like common within the political system and within sort of common expression in the society. The reason that it's important is because people to this day will talk about this last election as if it was a referendum on the fact that Democrats were going too far to the left, even though they ran a very moderate candidate who was the moderate vice president of a other moderate, dare I say, kind of conservative Democratic president. But the window's shifted. So basically, if you think of it as an axis, and there's right over here and there's left over here, flip this obviously if you're watching this on screen. But as you could have two extremes, but what we actually have is more like a window like this that's shifted this way. So when somebody says, well, somebody is too far to the right, you have to go way over to the right to be considered a little on the far side. You don't even have to tread outside of right-wing territory to be considered a burgeoning socialist, a complete commie red. And really that just could be somebody who's like, no, I think we ought to raise senior citizens payout, for the next 10 years, or lift the cap on it so that it's fully funded. You're a communist. That is kind of a conservative talking point, at least relatively speaking. That Overton window has shifted that way because the United States is extremely far right. It has been for a very long time in a political ideological sense. Conservatives do not like to acknowledge that because the goal is to push it further to the right. If they acknowledge they've won, then their efforts to push it even further would then start making people reach the connection. Perhaps they're the extremists, but the idea is to paint the left as the constant extremist, constantly pushing everything left. And what they'll usually do is tar them with usually kind of controversial social issues that aren't necessarily left-wing in theory, but they are liberal in the sense that they tug at the heartstrings, or they cause controversy or something like that. So I hope that's a really bad explanation of the Overton window, but look it up. Let's see here. Ooh, pine nuts again. Yeah, not the good kind though. Coco says, Ambassador Brzezinski ensured us today that Trump loves Poland and will work with us. So that's that. Oh, okay. I saw Elon claim everything they do will be completely transparent. I'd be amazed if that lasted longer than a day or two. Yeah, I don't think anything's been transparent on Twitter/X. So Nicole Wilson's here. Also good to see you. You're not really late for anything. I was just going over the Overton window. So anyway, I want to keep that in mind, because when you hear people in politics, whether they're experts or they're just a voter or whatever, say, "Ooh, that person's gone too far to the left," I want you to remember that when they say that, that is like the person who just started going to the gym twice a week for 15 minutes, wanting to be really careful about how much they lift because they don't want to turn into Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right? That is clearly stupid, right? That is not going to happen to them. But it's this thing that people have in their head that they think is actually real. It's a fantasy. It's completely false. Like, you're not going to get too bulky doing that little bit of work. You will have fast gains if you've never exercised, but it will happen. But you will not turn into, Conan the Destroyer. You need a lot more in you in order to do that. So anyway, you either need steroids or a mutagenic ooze is what I'm saying. So let's get this started. So Overton window, political ideology and chatting in the United States is sort of perma-screwed. So let's get into this and see what kind of enlightenment Pine Creek and Fareed Zakaria, CNN's best plagiarist, have to offer us.
There's two reasons why Trump won. Maybe 2.5. People are thinking economy. No,
there's only one. But
no, that's not the real reason.
The American economy is doing better than all these other nations. Employment is strong, wages are up, inflation is down, productivity is soaring.
Immigration and the woke nonsense.
The woke nonsense really doesn't matter, because the woke nonsense wasn't what any of these guys, none of the Democrats actually campaigned on this. I don't mean to sound like I'm ripping off Jon Stewart from The Daily Show, but he had a good take on this, where he showed clips of what a lot of Democratic senators and congresspeople were running with, and they were running on securing the border and improving the economy and improving national security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They wanted to do something about inflation and high prices, and the cost of energy. They were usually having photos and video taken outside in the countryside, and were proud of the guns that they owned and proud of the hunting that they did. Tim Walz. They were proud of the Glock that they owned. Kamala Harris. Like, this was not a left-wing, super woke campaign from any Democrat that I saw. I mean, maybe AOC and Rashida Tlaib had some woke left stuff that really triggered some conservatives, but for the most part, most of the sort of moderate Democrats didn't. The woke ones that were running in the imaginations of people who internalize an enormous amount about what they think they know about Democrats from the rhetoric that they get from right-wing news circles in their bubble. Now, Doug is going to talk about how we are the ones that need to get out of our bubble. But naturally, I have very strong opinions about that. Since when don't I?
First big error was the Biden administration's blindness to the collapse of the immigration system.
The immigration system did not collapse. The immigration system was put into a series of various stressors because of multiple refugee crises. And because our immigration system is already bad, it didn't take much to make it look terrible. And the conservative media took great pride in making sure that the news was focused on this all the time. Right? They wanted to make sure that, look at how insecure our border is. We're being invaded. Actual language from Agenda 47, Donald Trump's RNC Trump platform, is that it's an invasion. That's the language that they used. So they're using wartime language in order to talk about this. You have two things going on. You have the normal kind of inflation where people are pursuing visas, coming here as tourists, coming here as students. And then you have the refugees that are coming over here and either getting some kind of temporary protected status like the Haitians did, and like some of the Venezuelans did. And you have others that are crossing over and declaring asylum if they get picked up and arrested. Many of them do. And they declare asylum, deal with the misdemeanor, and then try to do something with that process from there. He will probably say this and that. Most of them don't make it, right? They so like 74% of them get removed, but that's where we're at. So Fareed Zakaria said, well, this is a total collapse of the immigration system. It's not. The immigration system was already kind of kicked over and collapsed as it was. This rhetoric was used in the early 90s when they talked about the fact that just anybody could come across the border and visit for a while and get up to no good and then cross back. And it's like, yeah. And they said then that was a broken border. Those were tourist visas. So they were tourist visas for people from Mexico. If you want to change that, then you need to take up law to make the change. Trying to say like, oh, well, the other party is just allowing these people to come over here. They're allowing them to invade. They're allowing them to commit crimes. Our laws allow these people to make these kinds of journeys. They allow them to declare asylum. If you don't like that, you need to fucking change it. But they wouldn't. Neither party has been willing to do that, especially Republicans. They have put forward different things, and they usually end up trying to lard it up with something stupid. If there probably will not be any kind of like common sense approaches to fixing immigration, probably in my lifetime, just because of how stupid this situation has gotten.
And the chaos at the border. An asylum system that was meant for a small number of persecuted individuals was being used by millions to gain legal entry. Instead of shutting it down, liberals branded anyone protesting as heartless and racist.
There was a lot of heartless racism involved in the rhetoric coming from Republicans. Fareed Zakaria forgets this. The rhetoric coming from Republicans was that we were being invaded by these people, not that they were running for their lives, not that they were actively trying to escape some horrible thing that happened in their home country, and they're coming here to get away from it, right? Something can be two things, right? But no, the invasion language was what started out. If you don't want to allow asylum seekers, then you need to change the law. If you have the law in place that says, yes, we accept asylum seekers, but for right now, we don't want you, there's too many of you that we see, over there across the Rio Grande, so we're just going to shut it down. Schizophrenically. We just shut it down whenever we feel like it because the population at home is kind of freaking out about it. Even though, like, if there's an issue with absorbing too many of them, like in many cases, there were complaints from the cities that were doing this. And I think there was probably problems with the federal outlay of aid for those because they declared emergencies for that to free up that money for those things. That money needed to get to those cities and those people needed to be supported. That no city or state can take on that burden. That's just not the way their budgets work.
They go into the court system and try to justify their asylum case. 70% or so, nobody knows the true number, but it's the majority, do not pass the test of asylum. No. They come to this country because they can. They cross, they say the magic words asylum. They then hopefully get to find work and then send US dollars back to their home country.
It's easy to find work. The thing is that they have to get an asylum court date in order to apply for a work permit. Finding the job usually isn't, at least not in our current economy, hasn't really been much of a problem. Finding legitimate work after they've been authorized, that's also easy. The real trick is trying to avoid not working illegally, because the work permits also take too long.
To support their family. They don't care.
That's kind of a myth too. A lot of the individuals that do come here, even the ones that come here on asylum, are not actually spending that much money to send it back home, at least not initially. They can't afford to do that. Well, the economy is great, but it will be better with Trump. Us poor Europeans will have to support Ukraine on ourselves, and the USA will save a lot of money. Actually, we will have to buy we'll buy up their own security. I don't know that Trump is going to be able to get out of that, just because of the generals that are going to be advised. I don't think the Pentagon wants to abandon Ukraine, so Putin can just walk in there and take it. But we'll see.
I think the majority of asylum seekers are faking it. They're full of shit. They don't want murderers, rapists, sick people. They don't want trans people to even come to this country, because they're mentally ill in their mind. They need more health care and medical care.
Okay. So that's also almost everything he said. There's okay, that we don't want any criminals. We don't want any of these other people. No, we don't want any. Okay. As far as regular immigration goes, yes, we screen for those. As far as like refugee status, when people are crossing over and they're declaring an asylum case, if you want to screen for those things automatically, then change the law. Put the background checks in there so that you can turn them away immediately. If they do have a criminal background and they're like, "Hey, I'm here. I just crossed illegally. Charge me with your misdemeanor, but I want an asylum date." And like, you're not going to qualify for it. We can determine that already. Put that in the law. It's not in there yet, from what I can tell. It's been in executive orders in times of emergency, like COVID, but it's not there now.
They're going to be a burden to society. They want a ton of immigration, but they want to be picky. They want the best. They want other countries to get worse because of immigration. They want Venezuela to get worse, not better, because people are leaving Venezuela and coming to the United States.
I have no problem with immigration into this country. I have no interest in seeing a country where those immigrants come from get worse. I do not care about that. In fact, if anything, I think it'd be great if the people that do come here, they're able to improve their lives in a way they're able to one day return to their homeland and maybe improve it themselves. But, maybe I'm just dreaming.
States. We want the best of the best. And the United States can be choosy.
They missed a massive shift in American public opinion in just a few years. In 2020,
probably for immigration, but 2020, it wasn't that high. So many Trump voters with the same regret today I had after voting for him in 2016. Yeah.
Percentage of Americans who wanted to decrease immigration was just 28%. By this year, it was 55%.
Okay, so that's a different statistic than what he's talking about, because he was just talking about the ones, they're all for immigration, but they want only the best from those countries. They want to see their home countries actually get worse. That's the quality of people that we took out of them. That brain drain is coming our way. Okay, that's fine, but the polls are kind of shifting there a little bit, because again, there's a difference between bringing in refugees unchecked or allowing them asylum cases where you can see if they actually fit that, and selecting people for long-term immigration. Selecting people for long-term immigration, they're going to go through these metrics. Do they have a criminal background? What kind of education do they have? What kind of skills do they have, etc. The refugees are the real sticking point. And even Fareed Zakaria's, wonderful commentary here is not doing a good job of explaining to people the real cause of the problem here. Regular immigration in the United States is basically kind of broken too, but it has the metrics in it. If you talk to a lot of the people who are super worried about the way our stuff, they act like anyone can just come in, and they'll just get it. Doug does too. There might as well not. In fact, the way I think he thinks about this, if I'm being charitable, he believes that since the people that can cross the border can just come in, get a misdemeanor, and declare an asylum case, then you might as well not have a regular immigration process. However, this doesn't make any sense when the people that immigrate here with skills, with visa, with the correct paperwork, have a higher chance of actually getting approved to stay here longer than the people that sought asylum. So that entire approach is sort of blown up by the statistics that he will later cite here.
So, I was asked on The View, what would I have done differently? You know what I answered? I'm Harris right now. I would have never have done what Biden forced me and others to do. I would have sealed up that border.
That border was sealed for 2 years. I have said this before. I don't know why this is so hard for anybody to understand. The Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration took flack for not dropping Title 42 fast enough from immigration reformers who wanted to see it lightened up. They did not want to see the kind of draconian steps that Donald Trump had taken. They didn't let that drop. The discretion allowed to Border Patrol based on the pandemic ruling, Title 42, allowed them to turn people away for asylum, more or less any reason that they wanted. They had plenty of discretion with that. So it was not, it did not blow open on the first day. The numbers increased slightly, but Border Patrol had the means to enact under Title 42 to kick people. This is a lie that continues to live in the minds and mouths of people like Doug. Like, oh, I wouldn't have just let the doors open and just let anybody in. She didn't. Neither did Biden. That's not how it worked. If you paid attention and read, you would know that. And because you didn't, now I think what you should do is get on the Google thing and look it up. Yes, numbers increased after but they really increased after 2023 because that's when the pandemic emergency orders all went away. Then the numbers really went high. And at that point, yeah, Trump and Biden probably should have done something. Harris couldn't have done a thing. She's the vice president. She backs the president's play. She could not have done anything except talk to him about that.
You were the border czar. You were the border czar.
Yes, but
She was not the border czar. That also is an invention of conservative media. She was not even unofficially declared a border czar or border advisor. She was the vice president. She was given the assignment of traveling to Central American countries to talk to them about their economic issues that might be feeding more people to leave. She was not officially nor unofficially a border czar. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to your face.
Under the thumb of the Biden administration, and I was given my marching orders, and I regret that. I apologize to the American people for doing what I did.
Why would she apologize for that? If Democrats learn anything from the way Republicans run things, you do not apologize for shit. This is terrible advice coming from Doug politically. You do not apologize ever. Do not apologize. The only thing worse than apologizing is explaining.
That's step number one. If she would have done that, taken responsibility for screwing up the border, saying she'll never do it again, fall on her.
There is no such thing as a border czar officially, Tom. A border czar would usually be somebody who was probably an expert on the issue. They're brought into the White House. They might be made like a, assistant to the president, advisor to the president, something like that. Their job is to advise and recommend on issues involving that particular thing. If they're the drug czar, they're talking about drugs in the United States. If they're the crime czar, housing czar, whatever they want to call it. They're not official. It's just a political turn of phrase. She was not one. Not even unofficially. They never talked about that. The Democrats did not make a big deal out of her being some kind of border advisor as vice president. There were headlines about her getting the orders to take the trips down there to the Central American countries to have discussions with them about their economic issues. But she was not dubbed the border czar. Conservatives called her that. And Democrats, for whatever fucking reason, have a real hard time talking their way out of that shit.
On her knees and ask for forgiveness. Sorry, that was a bit of a pun.
When Kamala Harris went on The View and was asked how she would have differed from Biden, instead of basically saying nothing different, she should have said, I would have shut down the border early and hard.
Trump should go
early in 2023. It would not have made a difference. The Republicans were already painting the border as wide open in 2021. And like I said, there were left-wing groups and immigration groups that were already criticizing Harris and Biden for not doing something to remove Title 42 as authorization for discretion for the Border Patrol. It would not have made a difference. I can't believe Zakaria is being a naive nitwit here. That would not have made a difference. The numbers could have been double that. The Democrats were getting blamed for immigration. The only way they were going to get out of it was with a complete and total stop of all immigration. And then guess what the Republicans would have shifted to? The number of reentry attempts. They would talk about the numbers of people that are getting bounced back, because that's what happened under Trump.
Go on in front of the camera and thank the Department of Justice for indicting him.
The second error was an overzealous misuse of law to punish Trump.
This is a chicken shit, corrupt, one of the most corrupt takes I've ever heard. If you pay attention to what Fareed Zakaria says here, what he's essentially doing is caving into the right-wing narrative that the Democrats use lawfare to go after Trump. Zakaria's been repeating this multiple times. According to him, it seems like, well, this is just a terrible look for the Democrats, even though what the Democrats attempted to do was distance the Biden administration away from it completely. Merrick Garland never once weighed in on actually speeding any of these cases up. They kept most of them at the state level. The Justice Department did not weigh in on hardly any of the dates on these at all, and he could have. Merrick Garland could have done that. He had the authority to. They kept their distance from it. Fat load of good it did them. Because a moron like Fareed Zakaria is on here saying, well, that just looked terrible. Well, it could have looked a lot worse. They probably should have just done that. But that is irresponsible journalism from this ding-dong. He's saying, like, oh, well, they never should have actually tried to, the courts should never have held him accountable. And instead, it gets perverted into, well, the Dems used the courts to go after their political rival, and that made it look like the elitists were out to get him, and Trump had a point. Okay. That's because that's what their counter narrative was. You don't have to accept their counter narrative because it's horse shit. If the courts can't hold a person accountable for doing something wrong because perception is now reality, you have a decadent, corrupt country. I would love to hear Fareed Zakaria try to justify that stance. By that stance, you can't hold a president accountable for anything because it appears politically motivated. Even when you as a politician are not holding him accountable, state and federal courts are doing their job in holding them accountable. But because people are too ignorant about how civics works, they just see it's all coming from King Biden. And when it flips, it's King Trump's turn.
Most egregious of the cases pursued was Alvin Bragg's one in New York, one that even he was once skeptical of, but was reportedly pressured by some on the left into pursuing. Some cases, like the Georgia one, were legitimate, but the host of them piled on in rapid succession gave the impression that the legal system was being weaponized to get Trump.
The perception, even though it wasn't, and even though they were taking steps to try to massage the perception that they weren't involved. Merrick Garland keeping himself separate. Biden keeping himself separate from it, which is appropriate because it's none of his business. He doesn't dictate to the Attorney General what the Department of Justice should do. The Department of Justice has the discretion to pursue whatever cases they want. Merrick Garland did not have to divorce himself from the situation. He could have leaned into some of these cases. He chose not to because of the appearance of impropriety and political favoritism and bias. It did not matter. Conservatives and this idiot are saying, well, that was a mistake. You never should have done that. It looks like you guys were politically motivated going after him. Well, by the way that they're settling into this, because Trump has said that elitists are out to get him, if he gets a parking ticket in a conservative town, do we just allow him to use the narrative? I shouldn't have to pay the parking ticket because the sheriff was out to get me. He's probably some kind of communist. I bet he's even a trans activist. It's okay for him to weaponize that kind of perception in that direction, but the courts cannot do their job because for fear that the perception seems politically tilted due to a reaction of people's political ignorance. I can understand why you would want to be careful about this messaging if you were some cynical political operative and you want to avoid these optics when you're going for this kind of stuff. But what he's actually talking about is something that's been going on for the last 4 years, and trying to say, oh, well, this was a pivotal mistake for the campaign. The pivotal mistake for the campaign was not having Biden drop out, announce that he's only going to be a one-termer, and not having a Democratic primary. That was the number one mistake the Dems made. This other stuff is horse shit.
It confirmed to his base what it had always believed.
No, it didn't confirm that. They confirmed it for themselves because anything they see is confirmation of the bias they already have. You can't change that. That doesn't matter. You're not going to win the base over, Fareed. You're not going to change their minds. The issue is to prevent independents from becoming the base. You basically have to prevent them from getting sucked into the conspiracy theory. I can't believe that this kind of content is well, I can. It's CNN. This is fuck awful.
That overeducated urban liberals were hypocrites, happy to bet.
Because overeducated urban liberals were hypocrites. Okay, he's using that kind of language. He's using that kind of language when talking about this, but the liberals were the ones that made the mistake of trying to do these kinds of things to, and playing these perception games and fucking losing at them. What is he doing? Why is he labeling the other side? Why is he doing the right wing's work for them? If Dems are labeling the right wing as a bunch of fashy weirdos, and the Republicans are coming out and saying the Dems are a bunch of they're way too leftist and they're hypocrites and they're liars, you let them handle that themselves. This analysis is bullshit. All of it is bullshit. This is like the worst right wing hack trying to explain here's what Dems got wrong. None of this made a difference. No, there might be some voters out there that gave a shake or two about how the court cases were going. Most people cannot even describe to you what those court cases meant, what the crimes were, the laws that they were based on. They can't even describe to you the jurisdictions and how jurisdictions work. Just the basic difference between a federal court and a state court. They can't do it. So saying like, oh, well, the perception was all wrong. Of course it's going to be all wrong. If the majority of people do not get it, then you don't even bring it up. The majority of people that were going for somebody like Donald Trump was because Donald Trump was promising them a better economy in exchange for kicking certain people out. That's why people voted for him, because that's an easy thing to grasp. All we got to do is get rid of these people that shouldn't be here in the first place, and then we'll all be richer for it. That does not follow in any way, but people would like it to. That's why they voted for him. How were Mexicans who wanted to cross the border in the 70s generally treated on the southern border of the USA? Probably not great, but the demand to cross in the 70s, that was before NAFTA, it wasn't that big. From what I understand, the 70s was kind of a lower point of any kind of immigration. And then remember, when immigration started to become like a little bit of a hot topic, I brought this up before, in the early 90s, the issue was the exact opposite of what it was now. It wasn't the fact that they were coming here and staying. It was the fact that they were coming and going as they pleased. So it's amazing how much has changed in 30 years.
Bend rules and norms when it suited their purposes. It's worth noting that in this week's election,
the Dems did not issue this shit. There were Democrats who are part of those offices, but this was not done as a campaign move. If courts cannot be trusted to enforce the law, you might as well give them up.
a CNN exit poll found that among those who believe that democracy in the U.S. is threatened, a majority supported Trump.
That's because he tells them it is. Of course. That's because he's repeatedly saying that they are. And you're dealing with a cult of personality. You have a guaranteed 24 to 35% of people who are receptive to this claim. They will answer in the strong affirmative. Yep, democracy is under threat. Trump told me so. There are plenty of people who were pro-Harris that'd be like, yeah, I'm probably voting for Harris. Do I think that democracy is in danger? No. And if that was higher, you wouldn't have people, it wouldn't have been so close in those polls. Will I vote for Harris? Will I vote for Trump? Yeah, overeducated. Yeah, it's telling the language that he's chosen for this. But again, I don't know if he chose this. Fareed Zakaria is a notorious plagiarizer, so he probably stole this from somebody.
Lawfare turned Trump from being a loser into a victim. And as his indictments grew,
that's his play. That's why he's going to become very, very unpopular as he goes on now. Now he has power. The Republicans have the Senate and the House. So now when he screws up, He doesn't really have anybody to blame except rhinos. They're going to eat each other now.
His campaign contributions surged and his poll numbers solidified.
Your relentless lecturing to us, your fear-mongering.
Our fear-mongering and our lecturing. Has he sat in a room with conservatives ever? Doug has actually lectured me. I've heard him lecture. He makes videos where he lectures people after the fact. You guys, in fact, the next video that I'll be playing is a lecture to progressives. Keep that in mind.
Fascist, dictator. You helped Trump win.
The final error is a more diffuse one.
No, those people were automatically going to be unresponsive to that message anyway because they were Trump's base. It doesn't. In a presidential election, the goal is to pull the independents away from the base of the other side. If you can, in some way, start convincing people who are in the base and pull them over, go ahead and do that if you can. But generally speaking, the language you would use to try to win them over and bring them over is probably going to be either ineffective or slightly alienating to the independents. What you want to do is use the language that fires up your base the best and try to have that bring as many people over, because that will make you look more authentic to people who are undivided. If you look like you're pandering, then you're not going to win. No one hire Fareed Zakaria or Doug for a campaign job.
Dominance of identity politics on the left, which made it push for all kinds of DEI policies that largely came out of the urban academic bubble, but alienated many mainstream voters.
The urban academic bubble. Again, citation, please. What are you talking about? Most of this stuff stays in the urban academic bubble. I don't even know what that combination is, unless he's talking about, pretty sure, he's dropping a dog whistle for critical race theory, which never fucking left law school. It never did. He's blaming leftists, he's blaming Democrats for the rhetoric Republicans use against them. And Democrats don't back critical race theory, not as a party. It is not a party position. I'm sure that there are Democrats that agree with critical race theory. They are more knowledgeable about critical race theory than the average person. But as a party, this is not some party platform position. This is just a hatchet job from Fareed.
If you're a woke, progressive, leftist, you ought to cry.
Who's running? Exactly, Matt. Remind me who ran on illiberal identity politics. That's exactly what Doug is doing here. This is identity politics. If you are appealing to normal, natural, traditional, the white picket fence, working hard, saving you money, pulling yourself up by those are all identity signals. This is what normal Americans do. And if you didn't do these things, you're not normal. So suck it up, Buttercup. You don't deserve special treatment just because you can't play the game. That's identity politics. So if somebody comes around and says, well, wait a minute, Americans don't have to be this just, kind of two-dimensional thing. Oh, here come the identity politics again. Oh, you want to dye your hair rainbow colors? Marry your lawn chair or something? Yeah, leftist weirdo. Like, no, nobody wants to fucking do that. And anybody that does is out of the party. All right. How about that? We'll take them outside. We'll slap them with a fish or something just for fun. We'll put it on TikTok. But in the meantime, stop bitching about identity politics when they work so fucking good for you. This is the amazing lie. This is the hypocrisy. Trump won on identity politics. Who needed to go? What was the problem in the country? The economy. Prices are high. What was Trump and Vance's solution? Get rid of those people that are costing you. Get rid of them. Don't let them in. And the ones that are here, kick them out. J.D. Vance admitted that was their housing policy. They're going to remove so many people that don't belong here that we're all going to have dibs on their houses. Hooray. That's not how anything works. That's not going to work that way. So.
Please do. This is a rebuke of everything you believe in.
It was not. It was not a rebuke of nearly anything. Nearly every Democrat that ran on a moderate conservative position. All of them. This is not a rebuke of woke crap. The only way you can get there is if you say, well, you know what's woke? You giving a shit about migrants and immigrants that came here. And this is a rebuke to that, because these people, you know what the American people want? They want to get rid of them so that they can get rich. That's what it is. This doesn't have anything to do with either racism specifically or misogyny specifically. It's just people being shitheads. And that crap logic worked on enough of them. They're like, you know what? I'll just vote for Trump because, yeah, I know he's a criminal and he sucks. And we had him before and he sucked then too. He was the most unpopular president since polling has been around. But you know what? Let's roll the dice. Why would you do that? Why would a few more people, because it's about 1 million more now, why would 1 million more be more interested in having him in here? Because the sales pitch was, you're going to be better off without them, and I'm going to get rid of them for you. It was a revenge play. What's with Americans and college indoctrination? That goes back to the early days of right-wing think tanks that immediately put it in there. This is very similar to the identity politics thing. The point was to start talking about how the ivory tower and the and the colleges and everything were these horrible places where this left-wing indoctrination happened. And what they'd use that for was to create little think tanks that had their own little ideological centers in them. There's a bunch of them. Actually, one of them is a pretty popular college in Virginia. So they actually did the thing that they were accusing the leftists of doing. But because some of the theories that they saw coming out of the colleges and some of the stuff that they saw coming from students, like, let's face it, anti-war protests, they decided to declare an ideological war against the schools, paint them as being an ideological monolith of just leftism and eventual Marxism that would drag the country into a mire of satanic panic and debauchery. They were the ones that were supporting the traditional family, the white picket fence, the little church on the hill, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, the identity politics of normal Americans. The platform for Donald Trump, the Agenda 47, begins with a dedication on its second page, dedication to the forgotten men and women of America. He even rolled out the silent majority. He played the silent majority card on his platform.
The American people says, we don't like you.
This kind of obsession made Democrats view people too.
Well, Doug, since you frequently tell people that we shouldn't care about what other people think, you telling me that you don't like me, I welcome your hatred. Isn't that the point? Am I not supposed to welcome that? I thought that was your well, we'll get into that lecture later. Rhetorical question. What incentive does the right have to fix things when they are the ones causing the most problems? None. Observe the 14 years the Tories were running shit in the UK. They actually ran this last one where they got kind of trounced. Mostly because nobody bothered to show up to vote for him anymore. They ran on a policy of like, you know what, we can fix the problems. They've been in charge for 14 years. In many cases, overwhelmingly so. The Brexit vote kind of happened twice. They voted for Brexit. It couldn't be deployed right away. But then they turned around 2-3 years later, voted in Boris Johnson. And they voted him in with a massive majority. Basically could do whatever he wanted. Then he enacted Brexit. They just kept going. Every time Tories would come up, they doubled down and they kept losing. They're still losing from that.
Too much through their ethnic or racial or gender identity. And it made them miss, for example, that working class Latinos were moving toward Trump, perhaps because they were socially conservative or liked his macho rhetoric or even agreed with his hardline stance on immigration.
The hardline stance on immigration is predicated on the idea that we're going to get something for it. I can't believe how hard this is for these guys to figure out. He's promising them good times and wealth if we just kick out the undesirables. This is not hard.
One of Trump's most effective ads on trans issues had a tagline.
Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
And I need to...
Effective how? I never even saw that particular ad in my ad market, so I'm not sure where that one was played. The one that was more played around here would have been the one where they were trying to say, it was the one where she was in favor of free sex changes for criminals and immigrants. Like, that's not exactly how that worked, but Okay, that one got some gained some better.
All the trans activists out there. Trump should go on camera and thank the trans activists for getting him elected. People are sick and tired of radical gender activists.
That wasn't on the ballot. I hate to tell you this, Pinecone, that was not on the ballot. They were running from that shit. Do you know how many trans activists were at the DNC when she was officially selected? 0. None. They had just as many of them as they had pro-Palestine activists out there speaking out against Israel's treatment of Gaza. Yeah, they ran super far to the left this time. I mean, this is just some amazing coverage. I mean, with these guys, you don't need. I mean, Doug should just take over Pajamas Media. The Onion should give InfoWars to Doug.
Shaping the minds of children, intruding spaces for women. People have had enough.
The problem is much.
They just had enough. Most people do not even understand what those issues are, and those issues were not brought up in this election. They were ignored. They played worse ads here in the Ozarks, Jefferson. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. Hey, good to see you. 8:30 to awesome. Hey, Jefferson can't stay, but coming to leave a like, which everyone else should do. 50 watching, only 13 likes. Come on, people. Yeah, do what 8:30 says. There was a comment up here from Biswell. Yeah. Have you listened to Sam Harris' video, The Reckoning? That guy is insufferable. Sometimes I occasionally agree with Sam Harris, but oftentimes I don't. I'll have to find that one.
Much deeper than simply one about nouns and pronouns. The entire focus.
Again, that wasn't an issue. Nouns and pronouns, that was not up. They weren't talking about that. This was an incredibly conservative, democratic push. Very few people on the actual left, and I mean real left, the ones that want national health care and are amenable to the idea of private property being outlawed and want corporations, all corporate laws changed. Those kinds of people, not super excited about Kamala Harris. Maya's absolutely right. No one ran on that except Republicans. Exactly. They put that in those people's heads. They're like, aha, these boogeymen that we have out here, that's what those people want over there. None of them want that. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, terrified of that. The only time that stuff came up was when Tim Walz was like, yeah, we made sure that they had sanitation products for girls in both bathrooms, just in case. The Republican response to that was, hot damn, we got him. Here we go, another gender activist. Tim Walz? I'm sorry, no. I mean, if anything, I'd probably tell Zakaria, maybe they should have leaned into it harder instead of trying to dodge it.
On identity has morphed into something deeply illiberal, judging people by the color of their skin rather than the content of their character.
The Democratic Party has been becoming slightly illiberal for a long time. The Republican Party is an active right-wing authoritarian party. Fareed Zakaria talking about, well, you can't win these liberal goals by being illiberal. Well, you know what you can't do? You can't expect tolerance in a country where you allow all the most intolerant people positions of power. It sort of violates Karl Popper's paradox of tolerance.
People have had enough of judging people based on their skin shade, the amount of...
No, they haven't. They have not. 76 million people voted on a situation where they hoped that a certain number of people, the unwanted, will be removed in exchange for better economic times. They are clear. Not only are they interested in hearing it, they prefer it. I'm sorry, Doug, you're just completely wrong about this. Those numbers do not lie. Look at what Trump won, and then look at the exit polls. Even the responses coming from millennials, they're barely coherent, but they're basically saying, oh, it was the economy. Really, even after he said that thing about tariffs, you're not worried about prices going up? It was the economy. Okay. Go to his platform. What's the first thing on there? They're going to crack down on immigration. Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Number 2 is carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. And then number 3, end inflation and make America affordable again. Those are the top three things. And those are directly connected in their logic. We get rid of these people. We prevent them from coming back. We end inflation and we get wealthy again. That's what people voted for. You didn't have to even go to the original paperwork to get the message. The message was being transmitted explicitly and implicitly by everyone in the Republican Party and by Trump and J.D. Vance constantly. And what they were transmitting about their opponents was bullshit. Oh, they're super left and they're super this and they're super that. And they're going to kidnap your kids and they're going to change them. Like, no, they can't do that. Oh, these people over here, they're so bad, they eat their neighbors' pets. People went and voted for him after he said something that stupid. Even Doug admitted after that debate that that performance could not be fixed. It didn't sound like Trump or Doug was even willing to even justify that performance. It was that bad. There are legit level-headed autopsies of what happened. This is not it. Mine or Doug's or Fareed's. Let's see.
Melanin in their skin. This is death to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is death to feel sorry forism. And
No, it's not. It is the ultimate expression of feel sorry forism. If we don't get rid of these unwanted, we, as real Americans, can't succeed. We're weak. We can't do it. we don't have the stuff. Yeah, maybe we were great once upon a time, but we can't take all these people in. We can't take on this challenge. I hear you saying that they don't bring crime and they don't bring drugs and they might actually even benefit the economy. I don't care. They're here. I want them gone. That sounds like feel sorry forism there. It's a bunch of navel-gazing, self-pitying losers who think that you can get economic success by kicking a bunch of people out of the country. Just like that. Like it's barely going to make a dent. If anything, if they manage to kick out the numbers that they're talking about, they're going to raise prices for labor and they're going to raise prices for food. That's one of the predictions that several economists have been like, yeah, if they do this wrong, that's what it's going to. Now, if they take their time and do it slowly, that's probably not going to please the people that did this. They promised a show. Hard and fast, big deportations, lots of people, sweep them up and kick them out.
love it.
Similarly, university speech codes and cancel culture have become ways that the left censors or restricts that most cherished of liberal ideas, freedom of speech.
Okay.
One simple way to think about the lessons of this election is that liberals cannot achieve liberal goals, however virtuous, by illiberal means.
That is incorrect, because you can actually achieve liberal goals with illiberal means. Liberals have been doing it for a very long time. Liberalism can, quite often, cozy right up to fascism, especially good old-fashioned corporate liberalism, where they don't mind a little authoritarianism, as long as it keeps some safeties on. You get a little safety program built in there. The ultimate welfare program would be, we remove a lot of negative people out, get the boogeymen out of here, and watch your wealth soar. Watch inflation disappear. Watch your job go through the roof. Now you can buy a house now. You can buy that person's house. We just kicked them out yesterday. Bonkers.
Do you?
All right. Let's dump this. All right. Here's a short that he did. So that just says, hate you. Let's give this a listen.
The fact you can't answer your own questions before you even ask them says volumes. Says you're in a bubble and you need to get the heck out. Learn to get out of your safe places. Learn to suffer and enjoy it. Take the pronouns out of your bio. You want to win, or do you want to feel good? If you want to feel good, leave the pronouns in. If you want to win, take the pronouns out. People don't like you when you use your pronouns. Except
Anyone picking up on some contradictions here? Let's keep it going.
that some people hate you. Just ask very nicely, please don't touch me. Please don't hurt me or my family or take my property. But you can hate me all you want. If you can do that, if you're a progressive, left, woke, liberal type, if you can learn to master that, you can think so much more clearly and try not to care so much. If you can learn to not care so much, it's unbelievable how more clearly you can think.
Okay. So only half a dozen things wrong with that, I think. Let's play the first comment and see if we can sort it out. Maybe I'm just, maybe I'm tired, but we'll try to sort this first statement out.
The fact you can't answer your own questions before you even ask them says
The fact you can't answer your own questions before you ask them says volumes. I don't know who he's talking about there, but that's a weird thing to say. I don't know that I would be able to answer the questions I haven't asked yet because I haven't thought to ask them yet and haven't thought about the answers. So
says volumes. Says you're in a bubble. You
I don't know how that says I'm in a bubble.
need to get the heck out. Learn to get out of your safe places.
We don't need to. We already are in a non-safe safe place. A vote for Trump and a return for Republicans for like tripartite power and the national political reality. That means we're not in a safe place, right?
Learn to suffer.
Okay. He's taking the wrong take here. He's like, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. What Doug needs to do is pat himself on the back and go, hey, you know what? I think that you need to do A, B, and C. And congratulations, me and some of my ilk made sure that the reality of the country after January 20th is going to be exactly that. We're going to get all the lessons. And the other thing I would bring about this, the condescending, patronizing mentality of somebody like Doug, assuming that if you are in a different political ideology, if you lean left or you're a liberal, moderate, or whatever, and you disagree with them on these issues, the problem is that you haven't suffered enough. The problem is that you haven't learned how to be tough. You haven't lived in a reality that's caused you to suffer enough to really galvanize yourself and really, build up your defenses. I mean, how the fuck do you know? How many of us we already went through 4 years of Trump? There were plenty of people that were scared to death of what he might do. The reason he didn't really get much done was because he's an idiot and because his cabinet was stupid. And they practically couldn't keep anybody hired. This time, who knows what's going to happen? And there's plenty of people that are terrified of what that is. Are they staying? Are they surviving? Yes. This kind of patronizing horse shit from this guy. What you need to do is you need to suffer more. You need to build character. You are not my father. And here's the thing. Don't tell me how to feel. Not ever. Don't ever do that. Don't tell anyone how they should or should not feel about stuff. That doesn't make any sense. Right? Like, I'm not going to tell him, you should not be proud of a Trump win. I know he's proud of a Trump win. Do I agree with him? Absolutely not. There's nothing I can do about those particular emotions coursing through his body right now. But what he would like us to believe is that his are not a problem and ours need to be stifled because he knows better. And he's a dick.
And enjoy it.
Why would I enjoy suffering? Is this something that you learned like when you were a Mennonite? Did they just occasionally strap you to a rack and stretch you just to do it? I'm not really sure how this is supposed to work. Suffer and like it is abuser logic. Yeah, it is. Pragmatic Chris, turn off your humanity. Doug, yeah.
Take the pronouns out of your bio.
No. Again, he's fucking up. Why? You told me I shouldn't care. I could do whatever the fuck I want. I'm not taking first of all, I don't use pronouns in most of my bios. And in a lot of the cases that I do, I'm told to. It's an employer thing. It's a corporate, corporate accountability.
You want to feel good?
Both. I want to win and feel good. So fucking suck it. Also, do not tell me what to do in order to go along to get along when you just told me I should not care about what other people think. Does that make any goddamn sense?
If you want to feel good, leave the pronouns in. If you want to win, take the pronouns out.
The pronouns make absolutely no difference to me. Because they trigger you, I will put them in everywhere. I think that's hilarious. And you know what I'm going to tell you? Suffer. Learn to suffer. It's good for you. Stop pursuing those safe spaces, Doug. Learn to be dead inside more.
People don't like you.
It doesn't matter if they don't like me. I'm teaching myself how to suffer. What better way to do that than to embrace what's really me? Keep those pronouns in there. Draw their fire. I'll toughen up even faster.
You use your pronouns, except that some people hate you.
Okay. Except that some people hate me, but take the pronouns out because that makes people hate you. Okay. Doug frequently claims that I am contradictory in a lot of my logic. I give you this as an example of why that's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black.
Just ask very nicely, please don't touch me. Please don't hurt me or my family or take my property.
Oh, okay.
But you can hate me all you want. If you can do that, if you're a progress, left, woke, liberal type, if you can learn...
Woke, liberal, what the fuck does that even mean? What the fucking like, it doesn't matter how many people talk to this fucking ignoramus. He's still talking like this. What the fuck? Like, yeah, there's a reason why we dislike you. Like, you getting on here and pander and condescending to people. Well, this is what you need to do to be a more effective human being. Vote for Trump. Why don't you just say that, Doug?
To master that, you can think so much more clearly and try not to care so much. If you can learn to not care so much, it's unbelievable how more clearly you can think.
Okay, in order to prevent people from taking things from you, or in order to win at the stuff, win at what? Win at life? Win at savings? Win at conversations? Because you didn't win there. You told me contradictory things. Don't worry about people that, you shouldn't care if people hate you. You need to get those pronouns out of your bio because you'll make people hate you for that. Okay, Doug. What we won't talk about, just for the sake of your feelings. I know you don't think that you live in a safe space, but we won't talk about the amount of flooding or drought that is likely to increase in places like Arizona, thanks to the deregulation of environmental safeguards and a complete, surrendering of any kind of forward activity to do anything to mitigate climate change. We won't talk about that because I know that you want to preserve the safe space that is Southern Arizona. So, Pine Creek, I'm the next Bill Maher or Fucker Carlson. Do you know that Tucker Carlson only got $1 from his mom in her will? I thought that was hilarious. It seems like he's overjoyed in having people having people afraid of him. Weird and creepy. It is a bit. Yeah, I think he thinks that he's being really contrarian with this. But I thought this message from him, like, you progressives, you'll figure it out when you learn how to suffer. Like, you find me a leftist, an actual leftist, and you listen to them talk about their constant disappointment with politicians on both sides. See, Doug is a basic beige Betty when it comes to politics, because the rhetoric coming from some moron like Donald Trump actually works on him. He does get a little giggly and a little excited, maybe even a little tumescent. But for a lot of leftists, not only is he, Trump is just gross, but Biden and Harris are also deeply, deeply disappointed. The idea that we have not somehow learned how to suffer is hilarious to me. Every time Doug talks about politics, I learn a little bit more about how little he knows about politics. Like, Doug, get a fucking library card and read a fucking book. Anyway. He lied 30,000 times on his first term. People don't care. They believe him when he says he wants to eliminate people from the country. He's believable when he says that. I was just watching a guy earlier today that was like, no, Kamala has to say these things because Democratic handlers are handling her and guiding her speech, but we can believe everything Trump says. Like, we can't believe anything that Trump says except for a few key phrases, like make America great again, kick people out, tariffs. He actively did those things, right? We have a record on that. So, yeah, America has a 10-second memory. Yeah, it's worse than a goldfish. It's absolutely. And here's the thing. Before I leave, nobody who voted for, like, after wrapping this up, because I'll probably do at least one more of these. Rationality Rules did a take on the election that is also, I'm a fan of Rationality Rules. I like Steven's content. He did a video on it, his take on why Dems lost. And I have some thoughts. But it also gets into this idea of like people were economically pissed off. No, they weren't. People could watch these people talk about what they were going to do about the economy. And if they looked at the black woman and she said, I want to provide you a $25,000 down payment assistance on a house. I want to provide you with legislation that's going to cap the prices that some of these places can charge you so they can't gouge you on top of whatever inflation's doing to you. We want to continue to bring inflation down. And then the other guy says, no, I'm actually going to pass tariffs on all imported goods, even though economists are like, yeah, that's really going to raise prices. That's not going to help inflation. That's probably going to trigger a recession. And people looked at both of those and was like, oh, I voted for Trump because of the economy. No, you didn't. You didn't think at all. You vibed your way through it. I do not have any feelings about my only emotional investment in the Harris-Walz campaign was the amount of triggering it caused to certain conservatives. It didn't really seem to trigger Doug that much. He's just triggered by life. But I wasn't really excited, especially about her. I didn't want her as a primary candidate when she ran back in 2020. And as far as a vice president, I didn't really care. But your job as a voter, when you're looking at two different candidates, is to decide which one of these people is a more effective leader or a more effective administrator. At the very least, an effective administrator. You're not voting for royalty, you're voting for an executive. And which one's better? The lawyer or the dipshit? The choice was easy, dum-dums. It was easy. It was a fucking layup. And a bunch of people went and voted for the psychopath because he promised them some bullshit fantasies about how he can turn the economy around. And the only reason they're inclined to believe that is because they forgot COVID. They forgot how bad his first term was. And they actually believe that he was a competent and, business person because he was on TV for 14 years. I mean, it just doesn't get any dumber than that. I'm still waiting for one person, one conservative, and the challenge goes out to Doug. Provide me with an actual thought-out reason that I can't blow up in less than 30 seconds for why it was a good idea to vote for Donald Trump. I guarantee you, I can poke a hole right in it. Was it the economy? No. Immigration? No. Immigration was the boogeyman. It was the 1-2 punch in a oh, we're scared of this situation over here, and we turned it into a great big thing. Also, the economy and inflation. The combination of those three things was enough to stir up a bunch of stupidity in people where they completely forgot the context of who they were voting for. But the one thing that they did remember, the black woman wasn't good enough. Millions of Americans realized that between the two of them, the black woman couldn't do the job. The lying, cheating, sexual offender with a felony rap sheet was a better person to place our hopes on, rather than a competent female black attorney. I'm still waiting for people to just acknowledge the fact that most of this was racism. And to prove this point, I don't want to leave this laying there without a citation. We'll get this right here. Please hearken back to the good old days of 2017. This is from December 15th, so we're basically like 1 year into Trump's first term. And this is just one of many on here. The past year of research has made it very clear Trump won because of racial resentment. You can find this over at Vox. Still, like I said, it's from December 15th of 2017. Another study produces the same findings we've seen over and over again. There's multiple links in here. Give this a look. There's also a study in here that shows that that one of the things that can happen if you stoke racial resentment in a particular survey group, you can watch them change their politics right in front of you. I think the example they gave was with the housing thing. If you showed people pictures of like a struggling white family, and then talked about housing policy reform or public housing, they were much more amenable to the idea. If they were another white couple, you show them a picture of a black man, and all of a sudden that guy needed to fix his own problem and pull himself up by his bootstraps. So I think Tulsi Gabbard will become the first U.S. female president. She will get there, in my opinion. Tulsi Gabbard is a joke and a grifter. That isn't to say that you're not right. Right now, I don't have much faith in the voting public. She could get there. So what she needs is a TV where she pretends to be a boss and fires people. She does that for 4 or 5 years. Everybody will believe that she's capable of changing the world. So yeah, take a look at this video. There's also, there was a book on this. A new book reveals how racial resentment unites Trump voters in battleground states. This is from the University of Kansas. The book is called The Heart of Whiteness, Patterns of Race, Class, and Prejudice in the Divided Midwest. It examines regional variations in battleground states during the 2016 election. And then there was also another article that I had on from The Guardian. But it's more about racial resentment driving January 6th, which I know is a big trigger for guys like Pine Creek. He does not like to admit to that one. All right. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. Check those articles out. Like I said, there's other links to them, but this is an interesting little memory hole that currently they've all kind of forgotten about, that we had this start to pop up. We had books written about this where they had to kind of shrug their shoulders and be like, you know what? We forgot. Yeah, racism, big component. And the interesting thing is that in 2016, he was running against a woman. The racial resentment was because we spent 8 years with a black president. That resentment was still there. In this case, he was running. Now, and the other thing, too, I think if you go to the AP, I think the election results show the Electoral College is a blowout. But the popular vote, I think, shrunk down a little bit, actually kind of cinched up. 75,969, so just under 76,000. She had just under 73. So they're 3 million votes apart. That's about all votes counted now. So he beat her about the same range of the popular vote as Hillary beat him back in 2016. Still, extremely disappointing. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. I hope everybody has a great time. Thank you, everybody in the live chat, for keeping things interesting, keeping it fun. They want to repeal the 19th. You think they want Tulsi anywhere near the presidency later? Yeah. I doubt she'll stick around long. It'll be interesting to see how many of these people do kind of fall to the wayside as time goes on. So, well, like and subscribe, folks. Hit me up with any recommendations. I will be back to do another video. Like I said, I'm going to be doing another one on some of this commentary. And then I have another one planned for after that. So, yeah. Hit me up with any suggestions, comments, or anything, jeffersonspatchcock@gmail.com. Yes, I did learn about this. For anybody that didn't know, The Onion won the auction for InfoWars. They own it now, which is hilarious. Thank you, Mark Reed. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, James F. I hope that you guys all have a great night, and I hope to see you sooner rather than later. Like I said, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Or don't. I'm getting out of here. Good night.